Welcome back to Bittersweet Dreams. I'm Dodge the Grave, and it's time for sleep. Try to remove any outside distractions. Placing a pillow or rolled up towel behind your knees may help to relieve some of the stress on your lower back. Lay down. Get into the most relaxing position as possible. And relax. It's bedtime. With your eyes closed, I want you to begin inhaling deeply and exhaling fully. Breathe for me. Find all the tension in your body and allow it all to melt away. Melt all the tension away. Relax. Let's begin. Inevitable. Written by psyopticnerve. It began with the birds. They were found by a group of children playing near a patch of woods at the edge of our village. Can you imagine being somewhere between 5 to 10 years old and stumbling upon the decapitated, wingless remains of a few dozen crows? The screaming and crying alerted their teacher, who fainted at the grisly sight. As shocking a discovery as it was not the only occurrence. More wildlife was found in various states of dismemberment across our village. And what remained of them fell atop the roots of the thick forest surrounding us. Inevitably, the first human casualty was found. One Philip Douglas. Philip was a known drunkard, and while harmless, he spent many nights staggering his way from one end of Main Street to the other, singing and speaking madly of end times to the sky. The left portion of his body was found at the northern corner of town, cut cleanly in half, still clutching a bottle of whiskey in his hand. The right half of him, however, was nowhere to be found. Someone finally realized the pattern, so many things have happened since that. I cannot recall who. It's all across our village. Severed limbs and sludgy puddles of bodily organ juices left behind by Man and animal alike began to mark out an invisible border that could not be crossed. And as startling as this was, the revelation after was far worse. The threshold was shrinking. In sporadic intervals, the unseen force surrounding us would lunge forward, turning friends and neighbors unlucky enough to be in its path to geysers of red mist and unidentifiable pieces of flesh. Being the pious villages we were, we turned to the church for guidance.
God has turned his sight from us,
Father Samuel insisted, addressing us in the town square.
Unless we repent, in one blink of his eye, we may all perish.
Perhaps he meant well, but his preaching only culminated in vicious mobs sacrificing anyone they believed to be sinful, dragging them away, kicking and screaming before feeding them to what we now called the void, until all that remained were their ankles and feet. No amount of sacrifice would appease it. If anything, all these feedings only seemed to make it more ravenous. And even once we turned against Father Samuel and gave him to the void, it encroached. It is clear now that no one is going to save us. Not a god, nor a neighboring village, especially not our loved ones. I've seen that a brother would push his own sister into the void to spare himself, if only for a few fleeting moments. And still it looms, constricting, suffocating, inevitable. I've fought for so long to be the very last, and I must live with regret for the things I've done, however long that may be. For even as my toes disintegrate, even as the pain blinds me, I refuse to give in. BLISS by psyopticnerve.
Hey, how are you feeling, Donna? Are you comfortable?
Her voice is projected through speakers above me. Its owner sits across the glass from me, speaking through a microphone. Yeah, for the most part, I reply, still acutely aware of the probes connected to me, one on each temple and two across my chest.
Are you ready to proceed?
What, exactly does this thing do? I'm just a bit anxious, is all.
Oh, not to worry. That's one of the symptoms that the BLISS system sets out to relieve. Instead of a pharmaceutical, however, BLISS works by sending imperceptible electrical pulses through the nervous system in order to stimulate chemical responses from the body. A more natural approach.
Oh. Okay.
A reminder that this is voluntary, Donna. It's up to you whether we proceed.
I guess I'm ready, I say reluctantly. The lights to the room dim, leaving me in total darkness. I don't know what to expect, and at first I feel nothing, but slowly.
My body relaxes.
How do you feel now?
Feeling... feeling good. I note how far away my voice sounds. Disconnected.
Terrific. We're going to turn up the frequency a bit. Okay, Donna?
Sure. I feel a wave of euphoria rising in me, from the pit of my stomach all the way to the top of my head.
Still doing all right?
This is... I can hear myself laughing somewhere. This is, this is incredible.
Increasing frequency.
I'm out of my body now, light years away. I am a child laughing in the rain. I am lying beneath the stars in awe. I am staring into my husband's eyes, our bodies writhing together in ecstasy. I am the most incredible, blissful moments of my life, and I am all of them simultaneously. And it is a wonderful, almost unbearable feeling. A sharp jolt and a flash of white.
Hey, Donna, are you okay? Something is interfering with bliss.
Another sharp jolt. This time harsher, more painful. What's happening?
Hang on, Donna.
This time I writhe against my restraints. My only sensations are flashes of white and agony, followed by periods of blackness. Incoming patient, massive head trauma, internal bleeding, multiple fractured vertebrae, punctured lungs. Whoa, wait, what was that? What were they talking about? No pulse, no breathing, administering 50 cc's of Reviva. Patient unresponsive. Clear. This time, when the darkness is punctured by blinding pain, I see something. For a moment, I see through the light, and I can see blurry figures surrounding me. Her eyes opened. Did you see? She's still alive. Clear! Come on, it's over. Let her be. The pain disappears like the memory of a bad nightmare giving way to daylight.
Donna, so sorry about that. We got it all sorted now.
Her voice returns through the speakers, soothing, ethereal. What was that? I ask.
Never you mind, Donna. It doesn't concern you anymore, okay? Are you ready to proceed with bliss?
I hesitate for a moment, but I already know my answer. Yeah. Proceed. Taxi at Midnight. Written by Simba the Savage 8. Narrated by Dodge the Grave and Silent Grim. Midnight. The sky is a black velvet curtain without moon or stars. The streetlights are a halo of grainy light in the absolute darkness. Everything is blended together in one smooth mass, and my head throbs from trying to figure it out. I have been walking for what seems like hours, but I can't seem to find another living soul. At this hour, everybody's probably off to bed. A smooth convertible melts out of the shadows and draws up beside me.
Need a ride?
I nod gratefully, stepping inside. The car speeds off. I slump into the soft leather seats, breathing a sigh of relief. It really is peaceful in here. Tall skyscrapers and rundown homes give way to beautiful open country, with great rolling fields and the occasional shadow of a cow. Then I can see my house on the horizon, a solid white beast built of bricks, coming closer and closer. Yelling in joy, I announce that I'm home and for the driver to stop. But the driver goes right on past. My house gradually shrinks until it is just a dot on the horizon. Then it vanishes altogether. "Turn back!" I shriek until my voice is hoarse, but the words just bounce off his ears. Desperately, with no other choice, I feel around for the seatbelt buckle, but can only feel smooth black leather. I try to slip under the seatbelt, but it holds me fast, and the door is locked. Nothing seems to work.
Do not struggle.
Comes the voice from the front.
You will be there shortly.
But where exactly is he taking me? A hole opens up in the grassy pasture. The car begins its descent. Icy fingers feel their way up my spine, and I can't help but shiver. All the beautiful open country is replaced by globs of earth. Further down are long strips of bones, some twisted at unnatural angles. Finally, the car skids to a stop. The driver gets out, a tall figure cloaked in shadow and wearing a pair of white gloves. His face seems to distort under his cloak, twisting into a smile. He beckons me to come out, then hands me a sheet of paper. My heart sinks further as I read every word. Memories flash through my mind. Abusing the cat, and then my brother at 10. Stealing money and killing the owner at 12. It goes on and on, up until that fateful night. The night when I lay on the tarmac after the crash, body twisted all over and lying in a pool of blood, wishing death will come quick. And now he has. He leans over me with a big smile.
Did you enjoy the ride, my dear?
He says cheerfully.
Oh, I can't wait to show you what I have in store in this special place.
Uncle Garrett's Dolls. Written by Simba the Savage 8. Narrated by Error 404. Narrator not found.
You know I loved my Uncle Garrett. Swear, I would never harm a hair on his head. Not that he used to have hair anyways. He was always as bald as an egg. But he was so kind, so loving. He used to say I was his favorite nephew. And I was. He used to have dolls all over his house. Big dolls, small dolls, pretty dolls, ugly dolls. He would play with them. I don't like dolls, personally, but because I loved my Uncle Garrett, I kept quiet. He would tell me when I grew old, Ray, you would have my house. 'Cause I'm his favorite nephew, you see. He would do anything for me. So the night he died, I moved in right away. My ma kicked me out, see? When I was a youngin', said I was too lazy for my own good. So it's just plain luck my Uncle Garrett died. Heart attack, the doctor said. That's all, I swear. But the dolls, they were not so welcoming. They were everywhere. Everywhere. Every nook and cranny, their hair spilling out from beneath the furniture, from the corners, staring at me with creepy glass eyes and crooked smiles. They knew the secrets of this house, things I didn't. Then there's the whispers. They creep me out, I tell ya. Murderer, thief, liar. But I'm no thief, I'm no murderer. I'm Uncle Garrett's favorite nephew. I loved my Uncle Garrett. And neither of those things, I swear. So anyways, I tried to get rid of the dolls. Sell them. Throw them away. I always hated them anyways. I hated the texture of that plastic skin on my hands. But they always came back. Came back. More than before, staring at me with those creepy glass eyes and crooked smiles. No, I'm not mad. What I will say next is completely and utterly true. I actually saw them turn to each other and whisper behind their hands. It's true. It's true. I'm telling you the truth. Murderer. Thief. Liar. Why do they keep saying that? They are wrong. I'm telling you they are utterly wrong. The doctor said it was a heart attack, nothing more. I loved my Uncle Garrett. I had nothing against him. I did not sit by and watch as he grasped his throat, his face turning purple. There was no poison involved. It was a heart attack. He died naturally. Murderer. Thief. Liar. Murderer. Thief. Liar. Don't listen to them. I'm the human. Believe me.
My Last Time Babysitting by Discord and Dine. I checked my watch as I walked up to the door. 10 minutes late. I had been babysitting for them for 6 months. I was sure they wouldn't mind. Mr. Lopez answered the door. Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I started to say, but stopped when I saw him. His face was soaked with sweat and he looked slightly agitated. No problem at all, he said, ushering me inside. In the kitchen, there was only a single light on above the table. At it, Mrs. Lopez was writing something feverishly on a slip of paper. I'll be right back. I have to say goodbye to Denise. Denise was their 1-year-old daughter, who I had been watching for them. She disappeared into the darkness of the hallway, heading up the stairs. So, what movie are you seeing tonight? I asked, setting my bag down on the table. The pad of paper had holes punctured through it, as if Mrs. Lopez had been pressing the pen down hard. I don't know. I guess we'll decide when we get there. Mr. Lopez was shifting from foot to foot, looking more worried by the minute. I noticed a pretty sizable cut on his right cheek, dribbled with dried blood. "Are you okay, Mr. Lopez?" I asked. But before he could answer, I heard Mrs. Lopez returning from upstairs. We should get going. "Goodbye, Katie," she said, pulling me into a hug. She tightened her grip for a moment, and I could have sworn I heard a soft sob. "Thank you for everything," she said, with great difficulty. She began to say something else, but her husband grabbed her and dragged her out the door. Before he closed it, he gave me a mournful, almost apologetic look. Then he closed it, and I was alone in the dark house. I thought about going out and talking to them more, or maybe even just leaving, but in the end I decided to stay. Not turning on the lights so as to not startle up Denise, I climbed the stairs in the dark and headed into her room. I approached the crib and was about to lift her up when I saw a note laying on top of the blankets. I read it by the streetlight that glared feebly through the window. "Katie, I'm so sorry. He broke in while we were getting ready. He said he was going to kill us, do horrible things to Denise. He asked if anyone knew about us, and we told him about you. It's an exchange. I'm so sorry. I hope that God will forgive me one day." Looking out the window, I saw them pulling out of the driveway. They were crying. Perched in Mrs. Lopez's lap was Denise. Behind me, in the darkness, the door creaked open. I wet the bed most nights. By all good names are taken, 9. I've always had an incredibly small bladder. I guess it comes with being a small woman. My whole life, I've always gotten up to pee in the middle of the night, at least once, often twice. It's always been an inconvenience, but something I've just learned to live with, until I moved into my new apartment. This place is depressing. It's small and cheap and all I can afford. Since the divorce, I've been searching for a life of my own again, and this tiny mouse-infested hole with the creepy neighbors makes that life seem so much bleaker. But it was this or my car, at least for now. So here I am. My first night in my new home, I woke to pee as I would any other night. But this night, I found myself not alone. Standing at the end of the bed was a woman, a vasty woman, bloody and rotted. And she warned me that if I left my bed in the night, I would die. Paralyzed with fear, I laid there, desperate for the bathroom until I wet my bed. In the morning, she was gone. This continued every night for weeks. I would wake up in the night to find her standing there, always threatening me. And every night, I would lose the battle with my bladder, and I would pee my bed. Finally, I couldn't take it any longer. I couldn't live like this. If she could truly hurt me, she would have done it by now, right? The mattress protector I bought made plastic noises when I moved, and I was tired of changing the sheets every day. Tonight was the night. I was getting up to use the bathroom like a damn adult. When I awoke to find her there as always, I ignored her warnings and started to swing my legs over the side of the bed.
She flew into a panic, begging, pleading with me to stay in bed.
If you leave this bed before dawn, you will die.
She cried. I finally found the courage to ask her why she would kill me if I got up.
I won't.
She replied.
The man under your back.
On the Path to Forgetting by Reddit user GarnetAndOpal.
All those anal probes must have worked out for the aliens, because when they got here, they knew exactly how we tick. In less than 48 hours, they had us under their control. It was a three-pronged attack. First, they took out our weapons and all of our technology with an EMP. Second, they bombed every country's capital city. No one could escape. The people and government officials in each of those cities died. Then, they blanketed the earth with a high-altitude cloud, dimming the sun. The aliens let us know they weren't here to hurt us, just govern us as we deserved. They removed the cloud and restored 10% of the electrical grids. Because of the low power, we had to choose whether to light our homes or heat them, whether to cook food or light our homes. The aliens gave us another choice too. We got to choose what we want to remember, which was the same as letting us choose what to forget. After we made our selections, we were supposed to show up at a reclamation center and undergo their process. The sweet part was that they gave us a timeline, alphabetically. They spun it as a show of generosity and understanding. We all didn't have to give up our memories all at once. We could take some time to choose, and then their process would take a few days for each of the people to complete. Then they would call the next batch of people to come forward and be reclaimed. I saw what happened with my dad. The unfortunate bastard's name is Alan, so he was in the first batch of people to be reclaimed. Why do I call him a bastard? He chose to forget his family. He chose to forget everything except his sexual encounters. I saw his form before he left. I saw him when he got back 3 days later. He was a walking pervert. He couldn't keep his mouth shut about his sexcapades, and he couldn't keep his hands to himself. Everything I loved about Dad was gone. All the people who came back after reclamation were pathetic. One of our neighbors gained over 200 pounds because all he remembered was cake. Another one sat and cried about her pet puppy when she was a kid because all she remembered was patches. But my brother came back with an insatiable appetite for weed. He was dead within a week. It wasn't the weed that killed him. It was the lack of eating. He forgot how to eat. My name is Zachary. I still have a week and a half or so to wait before I'm reclaimed. I have my form all ready. I'm choosing to forget my humanity. I only want to remember how to kill. And then I'm going to kill every alien I can get hold of before they take me down. Just dig. By you shall not pass 121. Have you ever felt a profound urge to do something? And if you didn't do it, then it would cause you great pain and immense distress? This exact thing has been happening to me. It was this profound feeling in the pit of my stomach, in the deep recesses of my subconscious. It surged through me like electricity through a plug socket, and it was a feeling that I did not recognize. Do you want to know what it was? It's bizarre, really. I feel really foolish for even admitting it. It's something that's been filling me in like paint on a blank canvas. And I have been fighting the urge to comply, or trying to, anyway. Every day I've been waking up, walking up to my window and staring at this unassuming spot on the grass in my garden, wanting so desperately to dig it up. Every day the feeling grew stronger, more powerful, and I didn't know how long I could hold off. I knew there was something awful underneath that earth, something that I didn't want to find, but this feeling, I could not shake it. It may seem trivial to you, and maybe you're thinking that it isn't a big deal. Why not just dig the hole? What's the worst that can happen? Well, sometimes the worst can and does happen. This deep, cavernous yearning has been gnawing at me, clawing at me like vultures at a corpse, and I could feel my hands that were almost not my own, grip the shovel. Just dig. So, I caved. I started, and I haven't been able to stop. Keep on digging. The deeper I got, the more overwhelming the feeling became. Dig. 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 I think I was digging for around 5 days. I couldn't say. Time was but a vague concept that had become entirely alien to me. I just kept going, digging deeper and deeper until I hit something. Something hard. I clawed at the earth. My fingernails cracked and bled. I clawed until I couldn't feel the throbbing pain in my fingers. Then I happened to stumble upon something I didn't expect. Underneath the earth was a doorknob and a door. I stared at it for the longest time, when something happened that chilled my blood and froze my quivering heart. Something on the other side knocked and whispered, "Welcome." My last concert by LanesGrandma. The 70s live music scene was wild. My friends and I managed to see so many live performances because of general admission. It meant standing or sitting in the aisles between seats, so we didn't get in until everyone else got seated. It was also cheap. We loved it. We called ourselves Gen-Atters. I got general admission to see a band loved around the world. The closest place on their tour was Ferretti's Mountain View in the U.S. It was only a 4-hour drive in a city I'd never visited. None of my friends can get the time off work to go with me, but I knew I'd meet people once I got there. The ticket said doors open at 7 p.m. The ticket seller said doors usually open at 3 o'clock. On the morning of the show, I joined a few dozen early arrival Gen-Atters at the side of the mountain view. A few thousand came in after us, blocking us in as usual. I passed the time with Sly from Minnesota. He was a short, energetic guy. Despite his height, he was hard to miss. His bright red jacket was unique. The band's name was on the sleeves and the back. This was his 3rd time seeing the band on this tour alone. I knew quite a bit about them, but this dude's knowledge was legendary. Doors did not open at 3 o'clock. The crowd behind us randomly chatted, "Let us in," and "Can't stop us." There might have been other chants, but those are the 2 I remember in detail. Still, like Sly whispered, the ticket said 7 p.m., so we'd all agreed to that when we bought them. By 6 o'clock, I really felt the cold. I'd been up for 12 hours. Maybe fatigue made me more susceptible to the weather, or maybe it was adrenaline. Sly sniffed and said he hoped the staff would open the door soon. He looked cold, and I knew he hadn't eaten for hours. I offered him 2 chocolate bars, and he gave me a smoke. I lit up with the first lighter I found in my pocket. It was in a leather holder and strap that went around your hand, so it was hard to lose the lighter. Sly called it the Never Lose Me lighter, and said he loved it. I knew I could get another one, so I offered it to him. We both laughed when he said he'd keep it for life. At 7:05, we hadn't heard anything about getting in. I told Sly to stay put while I tried to get closer to the doors to see if there were signs. He nodded and made an exaggerated wave with the lighter holder firmly attached to his left hand. That stuck in my memory. It was when I realized he was left-handed. That's what we call left-dominant back then. I got 2 steps away from him, closer to the doors, when I heard a few bars of music. Either the band was warming up or the gig was starting. The doors for Gen-Atters were still closed, no signs visible. I was turning around to go back to Sly when I heard a low rumble. By the time I was able to turn all the way around, I realized the rumble wasn't coming from the Mountain View's music system. It was the wall of people running towards me. Now, I'd spent the previous 2 summers spelunking, potholing, caving, exploring cave systems. I'd never feared being trapped or being closed in a small space. Caves are logical and unemotional. They rarely close in on people who respect them. At the risk of stating the obvious, people are nothing like caves. The human battering rams running at me showed no respect. They were running over people already on the ground and pushing over anyone who wasn't moving faster than them. I looked for Sly. He was 2 steps from me, both arms raised. He nodded when the guy behind him punched the back of his head. He fell, arms still raised. His left hand landed inches from my feet. My best guess is he was unconscious or dead before he hit the ground. At least, that's my hope. Blood began pooling around his head and bright red jacket almost as soon as his unprotected face hit the pavement. I remember making a screaming face. I don't know if any noise came out of my mouth. I wanted to pick him up, give him some dignity, even if I couldn't save him, but the wall of people would not stop. Before I could bend to touch him, people hit me so hard they knocked the air out of me. I fell backwards into someone behind me. That person screamed, unable to push me off them. The dude I just met was dead, and the crowd was about to do what the caves did not. I was going to die, along with countless others. I woke in the hospital the next day. My injuries, including a broken left arm, broken left foot, and dislocated ribs, were not serious, and I was released that afternoon. Dad and Kyle, my oldest brother, met me at discharge. Kyle drove me home in Dad's car, and Dad drove my car back. I felt so guilty. I still feel guilty. 4 decades and years of therapy later. I never learned Sly's real name, so I couldn't contact his family. They had a right to know what a great dude he was. But police here said U.S. police couldn't release the name at the family's request. You gotta honor that. Rock on, Sly. I hope we meet again. I'm in a toxic relationship, written by Javiel. I'm on the ground, unable to stand. My face is a mix of blood, tears, and sweat. I look at my now ex-boyfriend as he stares at me. He doesn't seem to feel anything. Typical men. They come and take the life you built, throw it to the ground before leaving you a prisoner of the ruins you let them make. For as long as I can remember, my relationships always ended poorly. Each one a new scar on my heart to remind me of the failure I am. I blame my poor taste in men. I always pick the worst one. I must say, I really thought it would be different this time. That he would be better than the one before him. The worst thing is, I think a part of me will miss him. Let me tell you the whole story. Okay? You'll see what I mean. So, I met Kyle 6 months ago, shortly after I started my new job as a barista in a small cafe near my new apartment. He was already a regular at the place. Every morning, he would order a macchiato with a bagel. We started talking after I commented how a macchiato felt more like coffee for a child. He looked at me in the eyes and, with a chuckle, said it was important to keep in touch with your inner child. The exchange was brief, but intense. After that, whenever I worked, he would take a minute or two to chat. One day, red as a lobster, he blurted out, "Would you consider letting me take you out on a date one day?" I was surprised by his request, which he noticed, adding, "Feel comfortable to say no. There is no pressure on my part." At that moment, something changed in me. I started to see him for who he was instead of another formless customer. He was smiling confidently, like he knew everything, but without the arrogance that most intellectual guys exude. It was also the first time I eyed him up and noticed how handsome he was. Exactly my type. I just had to have him. Our first date was perfect. We had a nice dinner and finished with a walk under the moonlight, all the while having a great conversation filled with laughter. He even asked my permission to kiss me before I left. A date rapidly became 3, and soon after, he was my boyfriend. He was the ideal man in my eyes. It was like I fell into a romantic comedy. Our lovely bliss lasted 3 months before his numerous flaws started to surface. More precisely, it began when he asked me to move in with him. Of course, I accepted. At the time, it only meant I would be with him even more, which was all I wanted. Moving together is often a make or break part for a couple. Your life habits being confronted with someone else's is never easy, and compromising can also be difficult. But what is even worse than that is when there's no compromising. That was the main issue between me and Kyle. He refused to compromise at all. My point of view was always wrong. My opinions were attacked, and my requests were ignored. It is obvious to me now that Kyle was a very controlling man, an aspect he had kept well hidden thus far. Of course, at first, my feelings for him blinded me to the truth. I guess some part of me held on to the illusion that everything was perfect in him. Replacing facts in my brain with excuses so that I would pardon him, feel responsible for the situation, and beg for his forgiveness. The second time I doubted our relationship was when I met his friends. Since I was relatively new in town, I didn't have many friends. On the other hand, Kyle had lived here his whole life and had many friends and a good reputation in town. Per his request, I made a great dinner for them. I spent most of the day in the kitchen preparing a meal big enough for 6 that consisted of multiple medium-sized meals of his friend's favorite food. I barely had enough time to shower and get dressed before the first guest arrived. Let me tell you that it wasn't a pleasant evening. It was like all of them had this pre-made idea of me without us ever meeting. Every interaction with them was like I killed their dog or something. I also felt really insulted when Simon invited Kyle to join them for a boys' weekend in the woods. And instead of answering on his own, Kyle just looked at me before declining.
I told him that he should go, that he barely sees his friends anymore, but he was adamant about staying with me. Somehow, this situation made me look like the bad guy. Everyone at the table started staring at me with knives in their eyes. I knew they all wished I was dead. I sensed their hatred and excused myself before locking myself in the bedroom to cry. I had no idea why they hated me so much. As time progressed, Kyle started being mean to me. A snarky remark or a little comment about me here and there started to chip away at our love. I did everything I could to please him, but nothing could make him happy anymore. I bought him presents and cooked his favorite meals to try and win back his heart without any real results. He was now cold toward me and tried as much as he could to not be with me. The only way I could be close to him was by following him around unnoticed. And it all culminated when I looked into his phone and saw some text messages between him and his friends about how he was planning to leave me. I had to do something to prevent it, so I spiked his drink and tied him up to a chair. Of course, Mr. Control Freak was screaming the second he woke up, but it wasn't my first time. I had taken him somewhere far away. Nobody would disturb us. As usual, I'm the one getting called names like bitch and crazy, but I don't care. I know I'm not out of my mind. All I ask is for him to love me. If he really did love me, it wouldn't be hard for him to spend most of his time with me. If he really did love me, he wouldn't need anyone else. Not his friends, not his family, just me. If he really did love me, he would hide the bruises on his body and lie to protect me. After all, he's the one who made me hit him. Thinking all these things, I felt my emotions surge as they were trying to escape through my eyes. As they started overwhelming me, I finally found the strength to ask him, why don't you love me, Kyle? Huh? Why can't I be enough? I gave you all of me, and still, you asked for more and more. That's when it hit me. He would never be satisfied. I would never be good enough for him. He wasn't good for me, and I had to let him go. The rising emotions that now flooded my face began burning inside me like a fire overcoming my whole body. I became rage personified. I took the knife I brought with me and slammed it into one of his thighs. He probably screamed or begged for his life. They all do, but I didn't hear anything. I just wanted to defend myself. I was the victim here. He hurt me so much, I felt I could die. There was no other way for me. I had to get out of this relationship, no matter how. So, I stabbed him repeatedly in different parts of his body until I fell on the ground from exhaustion. Again, I'm on the ground, unable to stand. My face is a mix of blood, tears, and sweat. I look at Kyle as he stares at me. He doesn't seem to feel anything. Typical man. Like all his predecessors, he came and ruined my life. There's nothing left for me to do other than move to a new town again. Who knows? Maybe I'll find my true love next time.
Unlucky in Love. Written by GarnetAndOpal. unlucky in love. Yeah. That's what my mother called it. She said it was a family trait. She showed me a family tree, and going up as high as her mother could recall, no men. They stayed around for the fun stuff, but left when the going got tough. At least, that is what got handed down from generation to generation. Until I saw that tree, I couldn't put my finger on what made my family history so odd. I couldn't put my own history together until I saw the tree. Everything in black and white. No grandpas. No uncles. No male cousins. My mother told me about her own marriage, and it was full of grief and loss. My father, he committed suicide. And my mother told me she would never love again. And so far as I knew, she never dated anyone. Not even the nice old man who brought her blueberries out of his yard. My own love life was a dumpster fire fueled by napalm. Tumultuous. Yeah. I got married young, thinking I was going to trick the family curse. Sure that I would not lose my love to a young death, I married my boyfriend of 4 months. We were just out of high school and had our lives before us. However, he turned out to be an abusive jackass, and our romance ended in divorce after 3 years. Yeah, I was ready to call it quits on love. A couple of years ago, I got a call from an acquaintance. Totally out of the blue. She told me my ex-husband, Pat, was dead. We had only been divorced a short time, so I was still understandably pissed off about it. He what? I said, after a short yip of a laugh. She said, Moira, Pat died. He went to the hospital and never came back out. A pulmonary embolism. Actually, he had several of them. Apparently, he didn't know he had deep vein thrombosis that resulted in 5 large clots, and the clots decided to migrate. He was at the grocery store when everything got real for him. His legs started to swell up and hurt, so he got in one of those scooter things to try and finish out his shopping, but the pain got to be too bad. He got off the scooter and lay on the floor calling 911 on his phone. An ambulance arrived, and they took him to the hospital. And if I didn't already know the ending to the story, I would have just assumed it was his natural flair for dramatics, Although he tended more to anger than injury or weakness. It would have been more in character for him to overturn a bin of produce and stomp all over it. I guess, sometime between when he laid down on the floor and when the EMTs got him on the gurney, the blood clots shifted. And the ambulance, he grabbed his chest. He told him he couldn't breathe. One of the clots had moved through his heart into his left lung. And later, in the ER, they found that more clots had moved. There were clots in both his lungs. So in short, Pat survived the DVT, the deep vein thrombosis, and the PE, pulmonary embolism, and even the MRSA, the methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus infection. He had surgery to remove clots in both lungs, and during the surgery, He got an infection in the same place that they put the IV in him for surgery. They loaded him with high-dose antibiotics. Ironically, even the one that goes in an IV. And that meant yet another poke in a vein. And poked him and pumped him full of blood thinner so that he wouldn't get any more blood clots. He went through more than a third of the alphabet in conditions and diseases, survived surgery, and was tolerating a whole battery of new medications. He was telling visitors every detail of his experience, even calling on the local newspaper to try to sensationalize himself. Against all odds, he was on the mend. And then, his lungs suddenly filled with fluid. That was it. Pneumonia. Done and over. Carmen's a bitch. But life goes on. I wasn't that mean on the phone, but I also didn't say much to her about Pat. She was one of the women I always suspected of messing around with other people's husbands. It wasn't so much what she ever said, but more how she said it. The first time I met her, she looked straight at Pat and then me, and then said, "I feel sorry for you." I managed to get off the phone with her, and then I sat and smiled, just for a minute. He probably didn't deserve all of that suffering, but who am I to make that judgment? Out of the blue, I suddenly felt ready to date again. I got on the internet, chose a site by Googling chubby plus dating, and set up a profile under the username Lucky Kitty. Rare. Yeah. Well, the first night I entered the chat room, I struck up a chat with a guy. 1/4 British, 1/4 Indian, 1/4 Italian, and 1/4 Aborigine. Cyrus lived in a small town in New South Wales. He liked chubby women. The bigger, the better, he said. It seemed like only a month later, and we were exchanging I love yous. The only stumbling block I could see was the cost of flying down there to meet him. Finding reserves I scarcely knew I had, I managed to scrape the money together for a ticket. I got really lucky and hit a sale on foreign airfare, which also moved up the time frame. One thing was, Cyrus didn't seem as excited as I expected. What he said was confusing. He told me he was surprised that I had the balls to come and visit him from the States, and because no one else had. Maybe it was his left-handed way to compliment me on my planning skills, or maybe he really thought I was brave. It was a glorious trip, though. No one in my family had ever seen the stars I saw at night in New South Wales. Everything was delightfully unfamiliar. And at one point, Cyrus said, "Lucky kitty." I can't do the accent. Lucky kitty. Someone might think you're a botanist with all the greenery you're taking pictures of. I explained I had never seen any of these things before and wanted memories of them. Then I reminded him, "I wish you would call me Moira." Then I realized he was probably surprised that I wasn't taking pictures of him. So I snapped a few pics of Cyrus before capturing anything else on my phone. That one weird comment was the only sour note during the trip. About 4 days in, I realized that we were actually doing this. I was in love and was about to plan a move down under. We spent a perfect day in a small town called Nelson Bay, eating pies and watching the pelicans and dolphins. Too soon, it was time for me to return to the States. I gave him a tearful, passionate kiss in the airport. And less than 3 weeks after I got back home, Sirius broke up with me in a private chat. He said, "It's not you, it's me." I really can't do the accent. He said, "It's not you, it's me." He said, "I'll understand if it's too difficult to stay friends with me." He said, "You're too nice sometimes." It was simply over. The only thing that comforted me was that he broke up with me before I rehomed my cat. I curled up on the couch with Antigone and didn't move for the rest of that weekend. I almost left the dating site. I did stay offline for a couple of weeks. Then I thought, why should I be the one to leave? It's not fair if he stays and I leave. I changed my username to Risen from Ash and deleted all my pics from my profile. Eventually, Sirius contacted me in a private chat. How did he recognize my username? I thought he wanted to apologize for dumping me without a reason. Nope, not at all. He wanted to flirt with me and make comments about my cleavage. As a comparison to my next phrases, Mount St. Helens was a mild rumble. Chernobyl was cool. When I got done blowing up at him, I used that handy little red X in the upper right-hand corner on the window. Fuck him. But it was more than just fuck him. I asked myself why I should creep around with a sad, weird, depressing username and not seek someone new. I changed my username to Squirrel Butt and posted some 24 pics of my cleavage. How about them apples? And several months later, Sirius contacted me in another chat platform, one that was under my actual name, Moira Atropos. His tone seemed polite. Of course, he couldn't go too wrong with, "Hello, Moira." I asked him what he wanted. He wanted to let me know he had stage 4 bladder cancer. Wow. I dodged a bullet there. I thought that silently. Since I was not that big a bitch to type it out in black and white with him, he never apologized, per se. But I think his wish for as painless a death as possible was his way of expressing regret. Weeks later, I saw a post about French me a little, passing away from cancer. And a bunch of site members talked up how brilliant he was, how generous, how wonderful, how talented. There wasn't a lot of information about how he passed. I know. Morbid. Ugh. All anyone said about that was that he fought it longer than they thought he could. He went down a fighter. He was in good spirits most of the time, and his only complaint was pain. Still a little bitter, I thought. Yep. Dodged a bullet. But I never said it out loud or posted it anywhere. Anywhere but here. Because I am starting to think there is something more than just a lack of uncles and grandpas going on. Because I looked up my family name and it doesn't exist as a family name anywhere. Because 2 out of 2 exes ended up dead. Because I am still bitter about how they treated me. Because I found a new guy after weeding through dozens of guys. Because we are quarantined together with at least 2 more weeks to go. Because I can't sit down with my mom and have a face-to-face. Because it is a small apartment. He'll hear everything. Because I see everything. And I think he is texting another woman. across the room from me. So, basically, right in my face. Smiling, nodding, and texting like mad. Already, I see options, and I am really afraid of what's coming. I don't think I can overcome my nature. Cuttlefish by Traz O. The man was tired and alone. He was the last of his group, and as far as he knew, his species. He was realistic about his life expectancy, but had the habit of survival. He foraged through ruined buildings, moving slowly, frequently stopping to listen. The naked girl was too clean, too attractive, too unlikely to exist in this post-invasion world. She could only be bait. Her leg appeared to be pinned under collapsed ceiling rubble. She was wide-eyed and terrified. "Oh, thank God. Can you get me out?" He stopped moving and sniffed the air, expecting human spore. Cephalopods didn't really have a detectable scent. He smelled dust and mold, and himself, but nothing else. Not even the girl. No sign of a trap, because he'd be able to smell any sufficiently large group of people to man a trap. And the invader-modified mutants never worked with humans. Confusing. Unless the girl was really stuck as she appeared to be. The man remained still and considered circumstances. He looked at the girl again, and it seemed that she shook her head very slightly. There was something wrong here. The hair stood up on the back of his neck. He retreated a slow, measured step and quietly drew his katana-shaped sword, a collectible he had looted from an abandoned house in the suburbs. It was a cheap knockoff made from crap steel that wouldn't hold an edge. With frequent sharpening, it was just barely sufficient for slicing mollusks. The guns he carried were for dealing with humans. Half a dozen chunks of concrete rubble flickered, and it was suddenly obvious they had been cuttlefish the whole time. The girl screamed and they leapt, flashing colors and ripples that were intended to dazzle his senses and confuse his mind. He sliced and diced, carving pieces from his attackers. Several were able to get their arms on his limbs and torso, but the man was wearing paper armor made from old magazines. The suckers could attach to the outer sheets, but unless they wrapped all the way around, he could jerk them off at the expense of a few pages. One cuttlefish grabbed his forearm and took a divot from the fleshy part of his palm with its beak before he shook it off. Dismembered arms, still fighting, managed to attach to his face and scalp and draw blood. But they were more annoyance than dire threat. A couple of piles of dirt turned into octopuses and scurried towards his feet. He sliced one open, but the other was able to wrap arms around his left knee and began to squeeze and twist. The man felt a ligament tear as his knee torqued, and began desperately hacking at his assailant until he finally cut its mantle in two. An octopus is hard to kill with its 3 hearts and 9 brains, but cut into pieces, it fights with less coordination. The man staggered but kept moving and swinging his sword.
The girl screamed.
Behind you!
And he spun on his good leg. A colossal squid was hanging from the ceiling with 8 arms and reaching for him with 8-meter feeding tentacles. He chopped one of the tentacles off, but the other wrapped around his waist and planted hooks that extended through paper and pierced his skin. The man howled in pain and drew a handgun, firing shot after shot into where he perceived its giant eye to be. The hooks loosened a bit, and gasping and panting, he chopped at the tentacle, finally pulling it free along with chunks of his own flesh. The squid pulled itself through a hole in the ceiling, trailing several limbs that spilled gouts of blue blood. He took a couple of clumsy steps, blood dripping from his scalp and face, and pouring down his legs. He looked for more threats, but apart from writhing arm sections, there weren't any enemies left. Suddenly dizzy, he sat down hard. He wanted to reach the girl before losing consciousness, in case they came back while he was out, and crawled toward her while he could. He woke up, an indeterminate time later, lying against a dusty wall. He wasn't wearing his paper or pants, though he still had his underwear and shirt on. The rags he used to secure the armor were tied around his knee, and someone had made an attempt to clean off some of the blood he had been covered in. The girl was wearing his other shirt like a poncho and sitting cross-legged with her back to him, cooking pieces of octopus and cuttlefish on sticks over a small fire. He could see her leg that had been pinned was bruised and scraped bloody, presumably from pulling it out in desperation once the attack had begun. She had 2 of his handguns in shirt pockets. The man, quietly, drew a dagger from the sheath between his shoulders and lunged forward, putting an arm around her and the blade to her neck. She froze and said, "Calm down, mister. I borrowed your guns so we'd be safe while you were out. You take them back now, okay?" He didn't say anything. "Look, mister, if I wanted to hurt you, I could have done it before you woke up." Keeping his arm around her chest and the knife in his hands, he retrieved his firearms, felt down her body until he was sure she didn't have any other weapons in her possession. Then he released her and leaned back against the wall. "Can I turn around now?" The man grunted and pushed her with a foot. She turned around slowly and met his gaze. "Want your shirt back?" He stared at her until she became uncomfortable. "What? You don't talk?" When he did speak, his voice was a rough growl. He had to clear his throat and swallow to be understood. "Used to. Been a long time since I had anyone to talk to." His throat was dry and his lips stuck together in the corners. He looked around for his water bottle. Moving slowly, she reached to her side and picked it up and handed it to him. It was a 1-liter soda bottle, and it was full of a murky liquid, which he drank carefully. Water. He capped it and set it down, then continued staring at her in silence. "I wish you would say something. You're making me nervous." Why are you staring like that? Eventually, he decided to answer. You don't make sense. I'm trying to figure out what you are. She smiled slightly. If I give you your shirt back, you'll see what I am. He shook his head in irritation. Where did you come from? How can you be so healthy and well-fed? Where are your scars? He held out an arm covered with sucker marks, hook lines, and healed bites. Whoa. Why aren't you dead? He repeated himself. You don't make sense. She sighed and took a deep breath. I'll try to explain. Go ahead. She appeared to take some time to figure out where to start. Okay. You know what these things that attacked you are, right? Muted cephalopods, uplifted by the invaders, given a new way of breathing so they can live on land, and intelligence so they can work together to hunt us. She nodded. That's pretty much true. But how do you know this? I don't. That's what people say. For once, people are mostly right. She started to turn back to the fire, but stopped and asked permission. I think the food is ready. Can I check it? Now that she mentioned it, he could smell the cooking meat and his mouth flooded with saliva. He jerked his head in assent. She turned her back to him and did something over the fire. After a minute, she turned back with skewers of meat set on a relatively clean sheet of plywood, which she placed between them. He greedily grabbed one and started ripping octopus off the skewer with his teeth. He hadn't eaten in days. Can I? She pointed at the trencher. He grunted assent and took another stick for himself. She took one as well and began eating, almost dainty compared to the way he wolfed his down. They ate in relative silence for a while. He had finished 5 sticks of meat, and she too, before she spoke again. What do people say about why they did it? He swallowed and wondered if he should save the last few skewers for later. With his knee, he wouldn't be able to hunt for a while. If she tried to hunt, she'd never make it back. The bunch of crap. Guesses. Maybe they didn't like us eating calamari. She made a soft noise that he didn't recognize as laughter right away. He hadn't heard anyone laugh in so long that he couldn't remember it ever happening. What's your guess? That they're evil bastards who want us dead. What fucking difference does it make? We're almost all dead anyway. She shook her head. What you need to understand is, it's not about you. They didn't really even think about humans. You were just in the way. She spoke quietly. He stared at her for a long moment and placed his hand on the pistol in his lap. You're going to have to explain how you know that. She nodded. I'll explain everything. Again, she thought for a while. The invaders are very intelligent, in a way that you, with your single brain, can't really understand. I'm not talking about their technology, the genetic engineering and faster-than-light drive. Humans could develop as much in time. They can control multiple limbs more precisely than you can control your hand. They can be any color or shape they choose. An invader, any cephalopod, has abilities that humans can't even conceive. Even pre-invasion cuttlefish and octopuses can do things you can't imagine. He thought about what she was saying.
We always suspected the invaders were cephalopods. No one has ever seen them, though.
Some have. She paused. I have. She waited for him to say something, but he remained quiet. They're not just cephalopods, they're directly related to the terrestrial species genetically.
You mean panspermia?
She looked surprised. He smiled bitterly.
I've neglected my academic studies. Somewhat since the invasion, but I remember things. There was even a theory that cephalopods had extraterrestrial origin.
His voice sounded more cultured and less brutish than it had previously. I didn't expect that you'd be educated.
A lot of fucking good that's done.
When he didn't go on, she said, "So, you have to understand that, to the invaders, humans didn't even seem sentient. At least, not as they knew it. All intelligent life in the galaxy is like them. Of course it is. They seeded it." Again, she waited for him to respond. When he didn't, she went on. Humans seem more like automa that can perform clever tricks, like you would think of a virus. By the time they realized their era, it was almost too late.
Almost.
Once they realized that humans were more than they thought, they decided to study us, to learn about us, before we were all gone. He looked at her, suddenly intense.
And now we're getting to it.
I was an experiment, raised by invaders and exposed to captured humans, in the hope that I could form a bridge between the two, able to understand both species.
Do I want to know what happened to those captured humans?
She looked away. No. After a while, he asked her,
What are your plans for me?
"Why do you think I have plans for you? I could have escaped them."
Could you have? You would seem to be a valuable tool for them to lose track of. And our meeting sure seems to be a perfect setup. You in distress, me, your rescuer. You, sympathetic and warning me of danger. Then, after you, my nurse and caretaker, maybe I'll tell you about the resistance.
When she didn't speak, he went on.
That attack should have killed me. They gave up pretty easily, didn't they? Leaving me crippled and unable to get away, stuck here with you. So I'd have to listen to your story. And then what? What do you want from me?
She reached out a hand and placed it on his good knee. There aren't many of us left. We may be the last ones. He laughed bitterly.
I'm supposed to ask if you mean we'd be like Adam and Eve, right? Except we can't be. Can we? She stared at him, saying nothing. Then, why not? Because you're not human, are you? You're an invader. You put on a good show, though. She looked at him, choosing her next move, and then just gave up. What tipped you off? Your skin flickered a bit when you were trying to sell me. Your scraped leg is still wet. She looked at her leg, and it scabbed over. You've been watching my reactions and adjusting your appearance to suit me. You've been getting more and more beautiful the longer we talk. Eventually, I'd be your perfect woman. I can make you happy. Your happy slave, you mean? Is that so bad? You'd still be happy? I think I'll pass on the role of slave to alien conquerors, thank you. She leaned into him, and he drew back. It's not like you really have a choice, you know. Her limbs began to separate and become tentacles. He raised his pistol, and she said, "You must know that won't do anything to me." He said, "It's not for you." He put the pistol in his mouth and pulled the trigger. He had the habit of survival, but the resistance had secrets that weren't his to share. Can anyone help me? I'm on a bus that refuses to stop, and I don't know where I am. By darkly gathers. Okay, I'll admit it. I'm an idiot. Okay, I fell asleep on the bus like a dingus, and now I don't know where I am. I really don't know where I am. I reach into my pocket and try my phone. 17% left. I should be okay. I load up Google Maps, or at least I try to. I tap my finger against the screen impatiently as the bus rumbles softly through an unfamiliar part of the city. Could it even be a different city? Oh, how long were you asleep, Yaz? I study the time displayed at the top of the phone for the first time. Oh, God, I've been sleeping for over an hour. What the hell is wrong with me? I decided to give up on maps and just go straight to my contacts. The phone dips to 16% as I'm scrolling to my mom's number. I tap it and raise the device to my ear. The phone beeps, then crackles, and then just goes silent. I can't even tell if she's picked up. I try for a second time, but the calls don't seem to be going through. My breathing gets a little shallower. I'm starting to freak out a bit now. I allow myself a tentative glance around the bus. I've never been a confident girl.
The idea of admitting to someone that I've been an idiot and gotten myself lost, it makes my skin crawl. Yes, even to these strangers. If you're an introvert like me, am I using that correctly? Introvert? Then you'll be able to empathize. I'm well aware of how pathetic it is, but I hate talking to strangers. Worse if I have to admit some fault as I'm doing so. There were 3 others on the bus, not including the driver. A young woman a few years older than myself, maybe in her 20s, near the back, and a few rows ahead are a man and his daughter sitting in strained silence. I don't want to walk to them. They're giving off a really weird vibe, and the thought of waking somebody up, that's mortifying. So I remain in place, shifting uncomfortably. I stare out the window at the scenes beyond, willing, hoping, praying that I'm going to see a familiar statue or landmark. I'll recognize a street sign or something, and I'll be able to make my way home. But there is nothing. Only the grimy walls of rundown buildings, tents constructed across the sidewalk beneath flickering streetlights. The longer I wait, potentially the worse it gets, but I can't bring myself to move. I just stare at the scenes beyond as the sun starts to set in the distance. The world outside is cast in a faint, dusty red, and I realize I'm running out of options. Yes, get a grip. People make mistakes. You have to speak to the driver. Just go and ask them where we are, and if we're going back the way we came. Go on. I spend the next 5 minutes rehearsing what I'm going to say in my head, and then, with a deep breath, I rise to a stand. Body now in motion, I step into the aisle and stride down the length of the bus, the front drawing closer and closer as my heart pounds. I stop by the driver and quietly clear my throat. Excuse me? I begin. Sorry to bother you. The driver interrupts with a grunt and taps the little sign by the wheel. Do not talk to driver, it reads. I squirm but press on. I have to. I'm sorry, but I don't know where I am. I've missed my stop. Are we going back? Another grunt, louder this time, and the driver knocks the sign with his knuckles more violently. I freeze. I hadn't prepared for a reaction like this. After another long moment more, and all without even taking his eyes from the road, the driver grabs a glossy papered printed bus route from a rack to his left and slaps it down on the counter. I stutter out a quick thanks and grab it up, returning humiliated to my seat. I pass by the girl and her dad as I do so. Something compels me to glance up from the floor, and I do so. I meet the girl's eyes. She's about the same age as me, and she looks frightened. The man looks straight ahead. He doesn't look like he could be her dad, to tell the truth. And his hand is on her leg. My concerns with the driver are suddenly lost beneath a much thicker layer of panic. I try to rationalize the situation as I pass them by and sit down back into my seat, but I can't. I think the girl is in danger, and as the only one who knows it's now on me to do something about it, my heart rate seems to double in my chest. I put my hand in my hands, I run them through my hair, I try to ignore what I saw and study the glossy bus route. It's useless. I don't recognize the map, nor any of the stops. The place I got on isn't even listed. I stuff it away and look out the window. My leg jitters, and I peer back down the aisle at the man and the girl. Is he sitting closer than he was before? Or am I imagining it? Oh my God. Oh God, what do I do? And what if I'm wrong? What if I've misjudged the situation entirely and I cause a huge scene? I think I would just about die from the humiliation. But the clock is ticking. I imagine myself watching the news tomorrow. I see a headline about a girl who befell some terrible, twisted fate. I clench my hands against my knees. Something is going to happen. I can feel it. Something bad is going to happen if I let it. I try to put myself in her place. If I was being harassed, if I felt threatened or in danger, what would I want them to do? Something is the answer that comes to me. I would want them to do something. So before I can psych myself out, I rise once again to a stand. I expect to feel the blood drain from my body, but instead I am caught in a wave of adrenaline. I stride into the aisle a little closer and I call out loud, way louder than I had planned. "Excuse me!" The man remains facing ahead, but the girl swivels in her seat to look at me. "Are you okay?" I ask her, and she shakes her head. "Driver!" I shout to the front. "There is a girl in trouble on your bus. She's in danger." The man beside her jumps right out of his seat at once and spins to face me. I get a much better look at him. I was right, though. He doesn't look anything like the girl. Not that there's much that's even physically weird about the guy. He looks terrifyingly normal, except for his eyes, like a shark's. They stare blankly right through me, at nothing. The tension in the bus pulls tighter. I'm holding my breath. The man seems to realize he has made an unfortunate mistake, but drawing such attention to himself, and for one terrible moment, I think he's going to come after me. I double down my efforts and raise a shaking hand, a hand that ends in a pointing and accusatory finger. "Keep your distance and stay away from her," I warn him in a voice that threatens to leave me altogether. Something bizarre happens next. Something really, really weird. But the stress of the situation won't allow me to process the events for a little while yet. The driver, without speaking, and without stopping the bus, rises swiftly from his seat. Emotionlessly, he strolls down the aisle and unceremoniously grabs the man from behind around his arms. The predator barks with frustration and struggles, but the driver, despite being physically smaller, doesn't even break a sweat. He drags the flailing man back through the bus, pulls the lever to open the bus's door, and to my shock, throws him out. He throws the man right out into the street. Then he sits back in his chair, closes the door with a soft hiss, and resumes control of the wheel, as if nothing had even happened. I stand there for perhaps a minute more, though I have no idea of the times, really, until I stumble back into my seat in a daze. The second I do so, the girl springs from her seat and rushes down the aisle into the free one next to me, with a huge smile of relief on her face. She squeezes me tight in a hug. "Oh my God," she mutters. "Thank you, girl. Thank you so much." I hug her back, my pulse slowly starting to steady. "It's okay. I'm actually freaking out a little, to be honest. Wow. I've never done anything like that in my whole life. Wow." "Well, I'm glad you did," she says, pulling back and smiling at me. "He came out of nowhere. I fell asleep for a while, which I know was dumb, but when I woke up, he was just sitting right next to me. There were so many empty seats, I didn't know what to do. I froze up, I guess. You fell asleep too? I ask her, frowning. I glance to the back of the bus. Despite all the clamor, the sleeping young woman I clocked earlier still hasn't moved. Still fast asleep. She stepped right through it. There's something really weird going on here. I was sleeping too, which I never normally do in public. I woke up and I didn't recognize anything through the windows. I'm totally lost, to be honest. Me too, she says, staring right at me. What the heck is going on? And did you see what the driver did? The driver grabbed the guy and just threw him off of a moving bus? That's not something that happens. I know. I pause. I know. We exchange another look, and some of the tension eases. I'm Yaz, by the way. It's nice to meet you. Leah. She replies, with a grin and a nervous little laugh. We're both kind of on edge here, to be honest. And can you blame us? If only my brother was here, Ryan. He's a year younger than me, but he's so smart. Street smart, at least. He'd know what to do. I hope he's okay. The last thing I said to him was really rude. An irrational fear that I may never see him again passes through me, and I shiver. Doing my best to dispel it, he'd be handling this whole situation a hell of a lot better than me. I've never really known how to talk to people. I'm already deeply self-conscious about my interactions with Leah. I hope I'm not coming across too weirdly. I don't have many friends. But regardless, I'm allowing myself to get sidetracked. I need a plan. I need to think like Ryan would. The bus has to stop eventually, right? I asked the girl. It'll be a depot or a station or something. We'll either get on another bus or there'll be a taxi we can take. I don't have loads of money, but we could definitely cover some distance in the right direction. Leah asks where I live, and I tell her. With a smile of pleasant surprise, she tells me she actually lives like 2 blocks over. We bond further, but our conversation is cut short as the bus plunges into a sudden tunnel in the side of a hill. The tunnel is normal at first. Little yellow lights in the ceiling sped by, casting dim, scanning beams of gold through the windows and over the seats in regular waves. But the lights fade. Leah and I grow silent as we stare out the windows. The lights disappear, one by one, until we are driving through pitch dark. Black. The bus speeds along, showing no signs of slowing, but there is nothing to be seen through any of the windows. The vehicle rumbles, and my pulse races, and we speed on through the dark. What the hell? What the hell is happening? Where are we? Leah whispers to me. But of course I have no idea. I have no idea at all, and I don't think I'd be able to speak right now, even if I had something to say. All my efforts are currently focused on fighting a rapidly growing, pounding sense of dread, one that beats like a drum as it threatens my constitution. I have lost all sense of how fast we might be going. The only confirmation that we are moving at all is the ever rumbling and bumping of the bus engine against my feet and back. Wait, I murmur to Leah. Look ahead, there's a light. And sure enough, a tiny pinprick of light far ahead flickers into sight, and then it rushes towards us, growing and growing. In fact, it's growing faster than the bus is actually traveling. I'm sure of it. The effect is of something massive and glowing, hurtling right towards us. And compared to the pitch darkness of the tunnel, it is bright as hell. I cry out in alarm and screw my eyes tight shut, in part due to the light sensitivity and in part due to reflex. And even through my closed eyelids, I can tell that the bus has exited the tunnel as my surroundings are washed in a dusky orange light. The bus rumbles, and Leah grabs my sleeve. "Yes," she says urgently. "Yes, look." Tentatively, I do so. I open my eyes and gasp in horror. If I thought my previous surroundings were unfamiliar, they were nothing on this. Dark, desolate, and deep scorched plains of gritty gray stone extend far out to the horizon in every direction. The plains are littered with crumbled clusters of concrete and the iron beam skeletons of curious buildings, long since swept away in the winds as dust. I shoot a look behind through the bus's back window and am greeted by the sight of the rapidly receding tunnel, exiting out from the base of a jagged black mountain. Holy f***, I mutter. This is... I don't have the words. I don't know what to say. The sky is a cloudless sunset orange, and unless my mind is playing tricks on me, the shadows across the plains don't quite seem to line up with the angle of the sun. A low red ball that hangs deliriously above the far black mountains. And in the distance, in the very far distance, is something moving, something colossal and alien. I cannot make out the intricacies, but it shambles slowly through the wastes on 4 seemingly mechanical legs, one heavy footstep at a time. What the hell am I going to